The American justice system is supposed to be serious, but today we are looking at 69 people who treated it like a bad reality show. We have citizens demanding refunds on jail time, suing over bad lighting, and trying to fire judges like they are retail managers. You are genuinely not ready for this level of entitlement. 1. Let's talk about the bride who thought the courthouse was a Vogue photo shoot. She filed a formal grievance against the county clerk because the fluorescent lighting in the office was unflattering to her complexion. She actually demanded the judge pause the entire docket until golden hour hit the western window so her photos would pop. The clerk had to explain that a $25 marriage license fee covers the legal paperwork, not a professional lighting crew to hide your pores. 2. Imagine treating a felony trial like a bad Amazon purchase. A guy actually demanded a full refund on his court filing fees because he was found guilty. He argued that the service was defective since he didn't get the outcome he paid for. He screamed at the clerk that if a vending machine eats your dollar, you get it back, so why is jail different? He is probably still waiting to speak to the manager of the judicial system. 3. Most people try to get out of jury duty by claiming bias, but one guy just wanted better snacks. He submitted a written complaint stating that the vending machines in the juror lounge lacked artisanal gluten-free beef jerky. He claimed his blood sugar levels were crashing without premium protein, preventing him from focusing on a robbery trial. Apparently, his ability to uphold the Constitution is entirely dependent on whether he can get some organic kale chips during recess. 4. You would think putting on pants with a zipper is the bare minimum for court, but no. A defendant filed a discrimination complaint against the bailiff for making him remove his fuzzy Cookie Monster pajama bottoms during sentencing. He called it his emotional support outfit and insisted that wearing slacks violated his personal expression. It is really hard for a judge to take your plea deal seriously when you look like you are heading to a middle school slumber party. 5. There is always someone who thinks the clerk behind the glass is their personal attorney. One woman screamed for 20 minutes because staff refused to explain how to divorce her husband while keeping his boat. When told they legally cannot give legal advice, she filed a report claiming the clerk was aiding the enemy. She genuinely believed her tax dollars entitled her to a free legal consultation from the receptionist just because she didn't want to hire a lawyer. 6. Google reviews are ruining everything. A citizen actually left a 1-star rating for the county courthouse, complaining specifically that the man in the black robe was judgmental. That is his literal job title. He is a judge. The reviewer was shocked the court didn't have a customer is always right policy regarding his unpaid speeding tickets. He felt the magistrate should have had a more welcoming, hospitable tone while handing down a $500 fine. 7. Security creates a pile of confiscated items every day, but this complaint was special. A man was furious they took his lucky machete at the metal detector. He insisted it wasn't a weapon, but a spiritual accessory essential for winning his small claims, hearing about a fence dispute. The irony of bringing a massive blade to argue with a neighbor was completely lost on him, and he threatened to sue the guards for infringing on his religious freedom to carry lawn tools. 8. Buyer's remorse usually applies to cars, not spouses. A groom stormed back into the clerk's office 3 days after his wedding, demanding to void the transaction. He wasn't filing for divorce. He wanted to return the marriage license like a defective toaster because he found out his wife snored. He genuinely thought there was a standard 30-day return policy on government documents and got aggressive when he learned he couldn't just get a refund and pretend the whole thing never happened. 9. Someone actually called 911 to the courthouse lobby because she claimed the clerk stole her pen. The staff member had simply set it on the counter behind the glass while stamping a document. Instead of asking for it back like a normal human, the woman escalated it to a grand theft report, claiming it was a vintage ballpoint worth $2. It was a massive waste of police resources over a plastic stick that probably didn't even have ink left. 10. If you miss your court date, A warrant gets issued. Simple as that. But one guy filed a complaint saying the court failed to check his Facebook events calendar. He argued that since he marked going to a monster truck rally 3 months prior, the judicial system should have known he was busy that afternoon. He was dead serious in thinking the docket clerk should be cross-referencing social media profiles before scheduling felony hearings. 11. Some people treat real life like a theme park. A tourist wandered into a busy downtown courthouse and asked the front desk for a guided tour of the holding cells. When the deputies obviously said no, she wrote a scathing email to the city council about missed tourism revenue. She wanted to see where the bad guys sit like it was an exhibit at Universal Studios and was deeply offended she couldn't take selfies near the incarcerated individuals. 12. Trying to stick it to the man usually backfires. A guy tried to pay a massive fine entirely in unrolled pennies, dumping 50 pounds of dirty copper on the counter. When the clerk refused to accept it because they aren't required to take loose change in that volume, he filed a complaint about currency discrimination. He spent the next 4 hours sitting on the lobby floor, angrily rolling them into paper wrappers, which honestly sounds like the punishment worked perfectly. 13. I pay your salary, so technically, I am your boss. That is the line a woman screamed while trying to order a filing clerk to delete her traffic ticket. She filed a formal grievance for insubordination when the clerk didn't immediately obey her command. It is a bold strategy, but unfortunately for her, paying sales tax on a burrito doesn't give you the authority to fire government employees or make your speeding fines magically disappear. 14. You are surrounded by people fighting for custody of their children or facing life in prison. But sure, let's focus on the amenities. A local resident filed a complaint with the facility's manager because the soap in the public restroom was too gritty. She demanded they switch to a moisturizing lavender blend immediately. Apparently, having slightly dry hands while waiting for a restraining order hearing was the biggest tragedy occurring in the building that day. 15. A frantic mother complained to the administration that there were too many criminals in the hallway. She was there for traffic court but was appalled that she had to breathe the same air as people in handcuffs being escorted by deputies. She suggested the court build a separate nice people entrance so she wouldn't have to explain to her kids why that man had face tattoos. She seemingly forgot that a courthouse is exactly where the criminals are supposed to be. 16. Zoom court hearings changed the game, but some participants forgot the camera was on. A defendant filed a complaint against a judge for invading his privacy because the magistrate yelled at him for vaping shirtless in bed during his arraignment. The man genuinely believed that since he was in his own house, courtroom rules didn't apply, and argued that the judge was harassing him for just trying to relax during his felony burglary hearing. 17. Parking at a government building is always a nightmare, but one woman took it to a new level. She stormed into the clerk's office demanding to speak to the valet manager. When informed that the courthouse doesn't have valet service, she filed a grievance stating that walking 2 blocks in her heels was cruel and unusual punishment under the 8th Amendment. She actually wanted the bailiffs to go park her Lexus so she wouldn't scuff her shoes. 18. Sovereign citizens provide endless entertainment for court staff. One guy refused to pay a speeding ticket and filed a counter-complaint claiming the gold fringe on the American flag in the courtroom turned it into a maritime admiralty court. He argued that since he was a flesh-and-blood traveler and not a corporate entity, the laws of the road didn't apply to his Honda Civic. The clerk just sighed and added a late fee to his file. 19. We have all seen courtroom sketch artists on the news, but one defendant was furious about his portrait. He lodged a formal complaint against the media pool because the artist made him look fat and didn't capture his jawline correctly. He demanded a retake or the right to approve the sketch before it aired on the evening news. He was facing 20 years for racketeering, yet his biggest concern was that the charcoal drawing added 10 pounds. 20. A nervous witness complained that the Bible used for swearing in was unsanitary. She refused to touch the book that thousands of other people had placed their hands on, claiming it was a biohazard. She demanded the bailiff provide a brand new, shrink-wrapped King James version before she would testify about a fender bender. The judge eventually just let her affirm her testimony without the book to stop the line from backing up out the door. 21. The customer service here is terrible is a weird thing to say when you're being booked for assault. A man left a comment card in the sheriff's suggestion box claiming the handcuffs were too tight and left red marks on his wrists. He compared the arrest experience to a bad massage and suggested the deputies use fuzzy cuffs in the future to prevent chafing. He seemingly forgot that comfort isn't the primary goal of a detainment procedure. 22. Custody battles get messy, but this one was over a parrot. A couple filed a joint complaint against the family court mediator because she refused to interview the bird. They insisted the parrot, named Captain Feathers, could mimic the husband's voice and prove he was verbally abusive. When the mediator explained that livestock cannot provide witness testimony, they accused the court of suppressing vital evidence and protecting an abuser. 23. You can't just pause a trial like it is a Netflix series. A juror filed a complaint because the judge refused to grant a recess so she could catch the season finale of her favorite reality show. She argued that sequestering the jury during The Bachelor was a violation of her human rights and that avoiding spoilers would be impossible. The bailiff had to confiscate her phone to ensure she didn't live tweet the verdict instead. 24. Most people are happy when a restraining order is granted, but one petitioner was upset about the logistics. She complained to the clerk that the order was inconvenient because her stalker lived near her favorite coffee shop. She wanted the court to force him to move to a different zip code so she wouldn't have to drive an extra 5 minutes for her morning latte. She didn't understand that the order keeps him away from her, not the other way around. 25. A man tried to legally change his name to Optimist Prime and was furious when the judge denied it. He filed a complaint claiming the court was stifling his creativity and blocking his transition into a new identity. He argued that if corporations can be people, he should be allowed to be a transformer. The clerk had to explain that using trademarked names for copyrighted toy robots is generally a no-go in civil court. 26. Everyone hates waiting, but comparing a courthouse to Disney World is a stretch. A woman complained that there wasn't a fast pass lane for people who were just there to pay a quick fine. She suggested the county sell premium tickets that allow citizens to skip the security line and jump to the front of the docket. The idea of monetizing justice so rich people can speed-run their DUIs didn't sit well with the administration. 27. Evidence lockers are not lost and found boxes. A guy showed up at the front desk demanding the return of his property after his case was dismissed. The problem was his property consisted of a professional lock-picking set and a bag of stolen jewelry. When the clerk explained that instruments of a crime are not returned just because of a procedural technicality, he filed a theft report against the police department. He genuinely thought "case dismissed" meant, "Here are your burglary tools back, have a nice day." 28. Courtrooms are generally quiet places, but one mother didn't get the memo. She filed a complaint against the judge for asking her to remove her screaming toddler from the gallery during a murder trial. She claimed the court was anti-family and that her child had a right to witness the judicial process. The fact that the baby was throwing Cheerios at the defense attorney apparently didn't seem like a disruption to her. 29. Legal jargon can be confusing, but that is why lawyers exist. One defendant represented himself and then filed a grievance that the prosecutor used too many big words. He claimed the use of Latin phrases like habeas corpus and pro bono was a deliberate attempt to make him feel stupid. He demanded the entire trial be redone using only words found in a 5th grade vocabulary list so he could properly defend himself. 30. A newlywed couple was furious that their marriage license had a typo, but here is the kicker: they wrote it themselves. They filed a complaint demanding the clerk pay for a reprint because She should have known how to spell our names better than we do. They argued that part of the filing fee should cover a spell check service and refused to admit that they were the ones who scribbled Brain instead of Brian on the legal document. 31. Free Wi-Fi is a privilege, not a constitutional right. A man sitting in the gallery waiting for his friend's arraignment filed a complaint that the courthouse internet was too slow to stream a football game. He called the connection unacceptable for a public institution and demanded the IT department upgrade the bandwidth immediately. He was treating the back of a courtroom like a Starbucks lobby and was genuinely upset about the buffering. 32. Reality TV has ruined people's expectations of the legal system. A woman complained after her small claims hearing that the judge didn't use the gavel enough. She said she came specifically to hear the loud bang and felt cheated that the magistrate just quietly signed some papers. She essentially reviewed the court experience like it was a theatrical performance that lacked dramatic flair and sound effects. 33. Jail food is notorious, but courthouse vending machines are usually safe. Not for one health nut who filed a complaint that the lobby snacks were poisoning the community. He was outraged that a government building would sell sugary sodas and potato chips, claiming it was a conspiracy to keep citizens unhealthy and in the system. He demanded they replace the Snickers bars with organic granola and kombucha immediately. 34. Sentencing hearings are serious, but one guy tried to negotiate his jail time like he was booking a vacation. He filed a complaint when the judge refused to let him defer his 30-day sentence until after his planned trip to Cancun. He argued that he had already paid for the flights and that going to jail now would be a financial burden. He couldn't grasp that prison isn't a hotel reservation you can reschedule because something better came up. 35. Orange is not everyone's color. A female inmate filed a written grievance from the holding cell stating that the mandatory jumpsuit clashed with her skin tone and made her look washed out. She requested a black or navy blue alternative to maintain her dignity during the hearing. The deputies had to explain that the bright orange is for visibility and escape prevention, not for making a fashion statement on the local news. 36. Process servers have a tough job, but getting served during dinner is apparently a crime. A man filed a harassment complaint against the court because the server handed him divorce papers while he was eating a steak. He claimed it caused him indigestion and emotional distress, and that there should be a blackout period during mealtimes where no legal documents can be delivered. He wanted the divorce thrown out because it ruined his appetite. 37. Trying to get out of jury duty is an art form, but this excuse was pathetic. A potential juror filed a complaint saying the court chairs were not ergonomically designed for his bad back. He brought a doctor's note written on a prescription pad that looked suspiciously like his own handwriting. When the judge offered him a special cushioned seat, he suddenly developed a severe allergy to upholstery and had to be dismissed anyway. 38. Security checkpoints are standard, but one woman acted like she was being strip searched. She filed a complaint that taking off her belts and shoes was degrading and compared the courthouse entrance to the TSA. She argued that her stilettos were expensive and shouldn't touch the dirty floor. She held up the line for 20 minutes, refusing to walk through the metal detector until they laid down a paper mat for her feet. 39. Public defenders are overworked heroes, but one defendant wasn't impressed. He requested a new lawyer and filed a complaint stating his court-appointed attorney wasn't attractive enough. He genuinely believed that a better-looking lawyer would sway the jury in his favor, referencing legal dramas he had seen on TV. The judge denied the request, noting that legal competence is not determined by jawline symmetry or hair volume. 40. You can't edit the official record just because you sound dumb. A defendant asked the court reporter to delete the part where I confessed from the transcript. When she refused, he filed a complaint claiming the transcript was inaccurate because he didn't mean to say it. He wanted a do-over on the written record, arguing that his verbal slip-up shouldn't be preserved for eternity just because it was said under oath. 41. Small claims court is for monetary disputes, but there is a limit. A man filed a suit against his neighbor for borrowing a cup of sugar and never returning it. When the clerk explained the filing fee was $50 to recover 50 cents worth of sugar, he filed a complaint about barriers to justice. He insisted it was the principle of the matter and that the court was protecting thieves by charging for paperwork. 42. Another classic from the I know my rights crowd. A defendant refused to enter the courtroom because the sign on the door was in all capital letters. He filed a complaint stating that all caps names denote a dead entity or a corporation, and he refused to participate in a ghost trial. He stood in the hallway screaming about grammar and syntax until the bailiffs eventually dragged him in for his arraignment. 43. We live in an era of ride-sharing reviews, and apparently that extends to law enforcement. A defendant filed a formal complaint because the prison transport van didn't have Wi-Fi or leather seats. He compared the ride from the jail to the courthouse to a one-star Uber experience and demanded a partial refund of his bail money for the lack of comfort. He genuinely felt that being arrested shouldn't mean sacrificing legroom and mobile connectivity. 44. Cell phones are strictly prohibited in most courtrooms, yet people never learn. A teenager filed a complaint against the bailiff for confiscating his phone, claiming it violated his right to education. He argued that he was in the middle of a very important level of a vocabulary game, which was technically studying. In reality, he was playing Candy Crush with the volume up while his mom was being sentenced for fraud. 45. Witness protection is for people testifying against the mob, not for getting out of a speeding ticket. A man asked the judge for a new identity and relocation because he was embarrassed that his neighbors would find out he got a DUI. When the request was laughed out of court, he filed a complaint claiming the system failed to protect his reputation. He genuinely wanted the FBI to move him to Nebraska because he couldn't face his homeowners association. 46. Dressing for success is one thing, but a woman showed up to contest a $50 parking ticket wearing a full floor-length white wedding gown. When the clerk asked if she was getting married right after, she said no. She claimed she wore it so the judge would subconsciously view her as pure, innocent, and angelic. It is a creative psychological tactic, but unfortunately, the veil didn't hide the fact that she had parked in a handicap spot without a permit. 47. You have a right to an interpreter if you don't speak English, but this request was from another galaxy. A defendant demanded the court provide a certified Klingon translator for his arraignment. He insisted that while he understood English perfectly, his spiritual allegiance was to the Klingon Empire, and he refused to enter a plea unless it was in his native sci-fi tongue. The judge denied the request, noting that Star Trek isn't a recognized sovereign nation. 48. Social media influencers are trying to monetize everything, even their crimes. A young woman tried to pay her reckless driving fine with exposure instead of money. She offered to post a selfie with the bailiff and tag the county courthouse in her Instagram story, claiming her followers would bring in so much tourism revenue. The clerk had to explain that likes and comments are not legal tender, and that the judicial system doesn't need a brand ambassador. 49. Emotional support animals are getting out of hand. A man filed a discrimination complaint because security wouldn't let him bring his emotional support clown into the courtroom. He wasn't joking. He actually hired a professional clown in full makeup and oversized shoes to sit next to him and squeeze a honking nose whenever he felt stressed during his divorce proceedings. The judge ruled that a circus act in the gallery would be prejudicial to the administration of justice. 50. Fingerprinting is standard procedure, but one suspect treated it like soul theft. He physically fought the booking officers and filed a civil rights complaint claiming that giving up his prints would allow the government to clone him and commit crimes in his name. He was dead serious about the cloning technology, believing the police were building an army of his doppelgangers to frame him for future jaywalking incidents. 51. Changing your name is a legal right, but there are limits. A man filed a petition to change his legal name to Judge so that everyone in the courtroom would have to address him by that title. He thought it would confuse the jury and give him an authority boost during his upcoming trial for tax evasion. The magistrate denied the request, citing the obvious potential for chaos if the defendant and the judge had the exact same job title. 52. American courts are pretty informal compared to British ones, and one Anglophile was not having it. He filed a formal complaint that the judge wasn't wearing a white powdered wig. He argued that the lack of traditional barrister attire made the court look illegitimate and low class. He actually requested a mistrial because he felt the proceedings lacked the gravitas and historical accuracy of a 17th century English tribunal. 53. Silence is golden, especially when a court reporter is typing every word. One defendant, however, filed a grievance that the click-clack sound of the stenotype machine was violating his right to a fair trial. He claimed the rhythmic typing was a form of psychological warfare designed to hypnotize him into confessing. He demanded the reporter switch to a silent keyboard or just use a pencil and paper like they did in the old days. 54. Swearing on the Bible is tradition, but you can technically affirm on anything you hold sacred. One comic book fan took this too far and filed a complaint when the bailiff refused to let him swear his oath on a mint-condition copy of Action Comics #1. He argued that Superman meant more to him than any religious text and that his testimony wouldn't be binding unless he touched the Man of Steel. 55. Temperature control in large buildings is always tricky, but calling it torture is a stretch. A woman filed a human rights violation complaint because the courtroom was too chilly. She compared the air conditioning to cryogenic freezing techniques used by the CIA and claimed the temperature was set to 68 degrees specifically to make her shiver and look nervous on the stand. She demanded the thermostat be set to a tropical 75 before she would answer any questions. 56. It wasn't me, it was the car. A Tesla owner tried to fight a speeding ticket by blaming the autopilot feature. When the judge pointed out that the driver is still responsible, the man filed a complaint against the court for anti-technology bias. He argued that since the car made the decision to go 90 in a school zone, the vehicle itself should be the one paying the fine or going to traffic school, not him. 57. Divorce brings out the absolute worst in people. In a now famous incident that generated a massive complaint file, a couple refused to settle on who got the collection of Beanie Babies. They forced the judge to dump the entire bag of plush toys on the courtroom floor so they could pick them out one by one like children. The clerk noted it was the most dignified moment in judicial history as grown adults fought over a stuffed platypus. 58. Jury nullification is a controversial topic, but flirting with the jury is just dumb. A defendant filed a complaint because the bailiff stopped him from winking and blowing kisses to the jury box. He argued that his natural charisma was his best defense strategy, and that the court was suppressing his First Amendment right to seduce the 12 people deciding his fate. Surprisingly, hitting on the jury didn't help his case. 59. Judges are human, and sometimes they get tired. A defendant filed a motion for a new trial because he claimed the judge fell asleep during his closing arguments. The funny part? The sleeping was actually just the judge rubbing his temples in frustration because the defendant had been rambling about maritime law for 3 hours. The clerk's notes confirmed the judge wasn't napping. He was just deeply regretting his career choices. 60. God told me to do it is a classic defense, but suing God is a new one. A man tried to file a restraining order against the Almighty for causing a lightning strike that burned down his shed. When the clerk explained that you can't serve papers to a deity because they lack a physical address, the man filed a complaint against the clerk for religious discrimination and blocking his access to divine justice. 61. Filing fees are waived for the poor, but not for the spiritually wealthy. A woman refused to pay the court costs for her lawsuit, claiming that while her bank account was empty, Her karmic balance was overflowing. She tried to pay the $300 in good vibes and positive energy, and when the cashier declined the transaction, she filed a complaint stating the court was materialistic and out of touch with the universe. 62. Trial by combat hasn't been a thing for centuries, yet people still try. A sovereign citizen filed a motion demanding to settle his traffic ticket by challenging the police officer to a duel. He cited a medieval law from the year 1300 that was never technically repealed in his specific county. The judge denied the request, noting that resolving a speeding ticket with medieval weaponry would likely violate several modern health and safety codes, regardless of historical precedent. 63. Being put on hold is annoying, but is it unconstitutional? A man filed a formal grievance against the court clerk's phone system because the hold music was terrible smooth jazz. He claimed the saxophone solo was so offensive it constituted cruel and unusual punishment under the Eighth Amendment. He demanded they switch the playlist to classic rock or heavy metal to better represent the anger of the people calling in. 64. Parents often bring their kids to the police station to scare them straight, but the courthouse isn't a petting zoo. A mother filed a complaint because the deputies refused to put her unruly 10-year-old in a holding cell for an hour to teach him a lesson. She was furious that the jail wasn't a free babysitting service for bad kids and threatened to sue the sheriff for not helping with her parenting struggles. 65. Height differences can be awkward, but this was ridiculous. A very short defendant filed a complaint that the microphone at the witness stand was discriminatory because he had to stand on his tiptoes to reach it. Instead of just adjusting the flexible neck of the microphone like a normal person, he demanded the court build a custom platform or lower the entire witness box. He claimed the microphone placement was a deliberate attempt to make him look small. 66. Scheduling conflicts happen, but astrology is not a valid excuse. A woman tried to reschedule her trial date because Mercury was in retrograde. She filed a complaint stating that any legal decision made during this planetary alignment would be cursed and destined for failure. She genuinely believed the court docket should be organized around the zodiac calendar to ensure positive energy for all felony hearings. 67. Graphic design enthusiasts are everywhere. A man filed a complaint about the font used on his summons, claiming that Times New Roman is authoritarian and outdated. He requested that all future legal correspondence be sent to him in Comic Sans because it felt friendlier and less threatening. The clerk's office did not appreciate the critique of their typography choices and kept sending the standard boring font. 68. You can't sue yourself, right? Wrong. A prison inmate actually tried to file a lawsuit against himself for violating his own civil rights by getting arrested. He figured if he won, the state would have to pay him damages. When the clerk rejected the filing as frivolous and logically impossible, he filed a complaint against the clerk for blocking his genius financial loophole. He really thought he hacked the system. 69. Finally, the most absurd interpretation of the law. A man charged with public indecency filed a counter-complaint against the concept of pants. He argued that clothing is a social construct forced upon society by the textile industry. He claimed the courthouse dress code violated his freedom of expression and demanded the right to attend his hearing in his natural state. The judge, unsurprisingly, insisted that the defendant remain fully covered before entering the courtroom. Here's the real question. If you were on a jury and the defendant stopped the trial to complain that the sketch artist made him look fat, would you vote guilty just based on the audacity? Be honest, because I absolutely would. Tell me your verdict in the comments. Smash like and subscribe for more legal madness.